Chapter 1: The Child Beneath the Twin Suns. Beneath the burning skies of Tatooine. The twin suns hung heavy in the heavens, like the watchful eyes of ancient gods, their relentless light bleaching the horizon until sky and sand bled into one endless sea of heat and dust. In that unyielding wasteland, life clung to existence with stubborn defiance. Moisture farmers coaxing water from the air, traders crossing the dune sea under armed escort, and slaves toiling in the shadow of masters who owned their bodies, their names, and often their dreams. In the cramped back room of a slave hovel, a child's first cry rose above the hum of evaporators and the distant howl of the desert wind. He had no family name to inherit, no rights to claim, and no illusions about freedom. His mother, Shmi, held him close, the sweat of labor still cooling on her brow, her gaze soft but shadowed with the knowledge that life under Watto's ownership would be hard, perhaps merciless. Yet she whispered words of comfort, not because she believed the galaxy would be kind, but because she needed him to believe, for a while, that it could be that the boy, Anakin, was not born into a galaxy that welcomed him. He was born into chains, and though the iron links were invisible, they were no less binding. He would grow up learning to read the moods of those who could sell or punish him, to work long hours in the blistering sun, and to find joy in small, stolen moments, the feel of a breeze before a sandstorm, the hum of a podracer's engine, the sound of his mother's voice telling stories of worlds beyond the desert. But even in his earliest days, something stirred within him, a restlessness. That was not merely the impatience of youth. The Force, vast and ancient, curled around his spirit like a storm trapped in glass. It whispered to him in ways he could not yet understand, in the way the dice seemed to fall in his favor, in the instinct that told him exactly which panel to repair on a pod's overheating engine, in the sense of knowing a thing just before it happened. To most, he was only a clever boy, quick with his hands and quicker with his smile. But beyond the dusty streets of Mos Espa, events were already in motion. The galaxy was a vast web of politics and prophecy, and somewhere, far from the heat of Tatooine's suns, a Jedi Knight named Qui-Gon Jinn found himself drawn toward this desolate world, drawn by currents in the Force that even he, a master of its living essence, could barely articulate. When Qui-Gon first saw the boy, it was not his strength or his charm that caught the Jedi's attention, but his gaze, bright, searching, unafraid. There was something in those eyes, something older than the child himself, as if 1,000 unspoken destinies had been braided into his soul before his first breath. Qui-Gon had known of the prophecy, whispered in the halls of the Jedi Temple, and studied only in fragments. The Chosen One shall bring balance to the Force. The moment their eyes met, Qui-Gon felt the faint, terrifying pull of possibility. Not certainty, not proof, but a weight, like a single stone thrown into still water, sending ripples across the galaxy. Shmi said her son had no father. The claim sounded impossible, yet Qui-Gon sensed no deceit in her. Could the Force itself have willed this child into being? If so, the implications were staggering. But prophecy, the Jedi well knew, was a double-edged blade. It had been the ruin of many who tried to hold it too tightly, for the future was a living thing, mutable, treacherous, shaped as much by fear as by hope. The sands of Tatooine had seen the rise and fall of empires long before the Republic had drawn its first breath. Buried beneath the dunes lay the bones of soldiers and the rusted shells of machines from wars the galaxy no longer remembered. These sands whispered in the hot wind, though few could hear them. Anakin could. Not in words, not in images, but in a sense, a pull toward something vast and unseen. It was a pull he did not yet know how to name, but one day it would name him. When the Padres came, the boy stood on the starting grid, his small frame dwarfed by the towering engines on either side. The air shimmered with heat, the roar of the crowd vibrating through the very ground. Somewhere in that sea of faces, Qui-Gon watched, not as a gambler, not even as a Jedi, but as a man witnessing the first steps of a story he did not control, and then the race was over and Anakin had won. Not by chance, not by luck, but by a convergence of skill, instinct, and something deeper, something the Jedi could no longer ignore. That night, as the twin suns sank beneath the horizon, staining the sky in bands of red and gold, Qui-Gon spoke the truth aloud to Obi-Wan. He is the chosen one. But the Force was already whispering its own warning, one that neither Jedi could hear. The chosen one shall bring balance. But balance is not peace. And so, beneath the twin suns of Tatooine, a child who had been born into chains took his first step toward freedom, and into a destiny that would bind the galaxy in shadow and fire. Chapter 2: The Temple of Hollow. Light. The Jedi Temple rose against the Coruscant skyline like a fortress carved from light itself. Its 5 spires pierced the clouds, each a silent sentinel over the galactic capital. From a distance, it appeared immutable, a monument to serenity and order, untouched by the chaos of the worlds below. Yet within its marble halls, shadows moved, not of the dark side alone, but of doubt, fear, and truths the Jedi dared not face. Anakin Skywalker, now freed from the sands of Tatooine, walked its endless corridors with wide, searching eyes. He had dreamed of freedom, but not of this place. The air here was cool. The light filtered through grand archways, the polished floors reflecting the steps of Jedi younglings in their simple tunics. It should have felt like sanctuary, but to Anakin it felt like a cage made of beauty, a gilded one, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. The first lessons were simple: meditation, control, detachment, yet each instruction clashed against the fire that lived in his chest. The Jedi spoke of calm like it was the natural state of all beings. But Anakin had never known calm. He had known heat, noise, survival. Even victory in the Padreses had not been peace. It had been adrenaline, risk, and the sweet taste of defiance. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, tasked with his training, did his best to shape the boy into the mold of a Jedi Knight. But shaping meant bending, and bending often led to breaking in the vast archives. Anakin found himself wandering between towering shelves of ancient tomes and glowing holocrons. He was drawn to the forbidden sections, cordoned off by security fields and silent guardians. There, whispers seemed to drift in the air. Not literal voices, but impressions, like the echo of conversations long past. Alternate tellings of the prophecy lingered here, visions recorded by Jedi who had dared to see beyond the official interpretation. The chosen one shall bring balance to the Force. But what was balance? To some of these lost holocrons, balance meant destruction of both light and dark, leaving only the will of the Force itself, impartial, unbound. Others spoke of balance as the triumph of light over shadow. And some, far fewer, suggested that the prophecy was never about victory at all, but about correction, even if the correction required suffering beyond imagining. The Jedi did not teach these versions. They were locked away, their implications, too dangerous. Anakin felt their weight pressing on him in the silence of the archives. He began to suspect that freedom did not lie in simply escaping chains, but in knowing the truth of who forged them. The temple's grand training halls became the stage for his growing skill. His lightsaber drills were precise, his reflexes faster than thought, his connection to the Force undeniable. Yet he was restless. Where other younglings surrendered themselves to the slow, patient rhythm of the Jedi path, Anakin burned forward, hungry to master every technique, to take on every challenge. This hunger troubled the Council. Yoda watched him with the eyes of one who had seen centuries of potential twisted into ruin. Mace Windu spoke in measured tones, reminding Obi-Wan that attachment was a path to fear, and fear to the dark side. But to Anakin, these warnings felt less like guidance and more like walls. In quiet moments, the chains of his childhood seemed to reform, though they bore no iron. Here, the links were made of rules, rituals, and the unspoken truth that he was never fully trusted. There were nights when he would stand on the temple balcony, looking out over the endless cityscape of Coruscant, the lights of 1,000,000,000,000 souls flickering like stars turned upside down. Somewhere among them, people lived, loved, fought, and died, and he was here, in the hollow light of a temple that spoke of peace but prepared for war. The Force spoke to him in dreams. Some were bright visions of himself as a Jedi Knight, leading with honor, protecting the innocent. Others were darker, flashes of worlds burning, of himself standing amid ruin with a blade in his hand and no enemy left to fight. These dreams left him shaken, but also strangely certain that his destiny was too large for the narrow corridors of tradition. And then, one day, while training, he felt it, a subtle shift in the Force, like a breeze moving against the grain. He couldn't name it yet, but it was the first whisper of a shadow growing at the heart of the Republic. Somewhere, in chambers far from the temple, a man draped in the robes of a chancellor was already thinking of him, already plotting, and the boy, standing in the temple's hollow light, was unknowingly walking toward him. Chapter 3: Shadows. In the Clone Wars, the galaxy did not descend into war with a roar, but with a slow, poisonous seep. It began as whispers in the Senate, murmurs of separatist worlds breaking away from the Republic, of trade disputes turned violent, of systems arming themselves under the banners of independence. Soon, the whispers became debates, the debates became votes, and the votes became battle orders. The galaxy fractured into fire and steel. Anakin Skywalker was no longer the boy who had once raced across the Dune Sea for scraps of freedom. He was a Jedi Knight now, his name spoken with respect and sometimes fear among soldiers who followed him into battle. The Clone Wars turned the Jedi from keepers of peace into generals, commanding legions of soldiers grown in vats, bred for obedience. They were perfect warriors for an imperfect cause. From the bridge of a Vanata-class Star Destroyer, Anakin would watch the stars peel past in streaks of hyperspace, each mission taking him deeper into the chaos. Planets burned in the name of liberation, cities crumbled in the name of unity, and everywhere the line between friend and enemy blurred. The Jedi fought in armor now, their lightsabers flashing through smoke and fire, their calm voices giving orders that sent men to their deaths. Obi-Wan still counseled patience, restraint, the Jedi way. But Anakin's victories came not from patience, but from boldness, from refusing to play by the enemy's rules. His strategies were reckless, his maneuvers impossible, yet they worked. Clones under his command learned to trust him, not just as a general, but as someone who would stand on the front lines beside them. His presence inspired loyalty. His methods inspired unease. In the shadowed corridors of the Republic's political heart, Chancellor Palpatine watched with quiet satisfaction. He spoke to Anakin often, in tones warm and reassuring, never as a superior, always as a confidant. He praised the young Jedi's skill, his instincts, his bravery, all the things the Jedi Council seemed reluctant to acknowledge. In words, Anakin felt something he rarely received from the temple. Validation, yet the war gnawed at him. Every victory seemed to carry a bitter aftertaste. They saved one world, only to see another fall. They struck down one enemy, only to discover the Separatists had replaced him before the body was cold. Anakin began to see the war not as a battle between good and evil, but as a wheel turning endlessly, grinding lives into dust, and still, the shadows lengthened. On Coruscant, Palpatine spoke of trust. He hinted that there were things the Jedi kept from him, and perhaps from Anakin as well. He asked questions about the Council's decisions, about how much freedom the Jedi truly had in their service to the Republic. Always, the Chancellor's words were framed as concern, never accusation. Yet each one planted a seed. Anakin began to notice the Council's hesitations. They held back information. They debated when they should act. They mistrusted Palpatine openly, and in doing so, they pushed Anakin into a role he had never asked for, caught between two masters, each with their own vision of the galaxy's future. On the battlefronts, the fighting only worsened. Anakin led the 501st Legion in assaults that turned the tide of entire campaigns. Clones cheered his name, calling him the hero with no fear. But inside, he felt the cracks forming. Fear was there, fear of failure, fear of losing those he cared about, fear of what he might have to become to protect them in secret. He kept contact with Padme Amidala, now his wife in all but public acknowledgement. Her voice was the single thread that kept him tethered to something beyond the war. Yet even with her, he began to sense a distance, not in love, but in trust. She asked about the war's morality, about whether the Republic was still worth fighting for. And though he answered her, he did not always believe his own words. Then came the moments that shifted everything. On Cato Neimoidia, Anakin fought alongside Obi-Wan to secure a separatist stronghold, only to discover that the intelligence that had led them there was false. On the bridge of a burning cruiser, he executed an enemy commander who had already surrendered, telling himself it was for the greater good. And in the silence afterward, he felt the echo of that choice in his chest, like a door opening somewhere deep inside him. The war had made him powerful, but it had also made him dangerous, and in the deepest chambers of the Republic, smiled. His hand was already on the wheel, guiding the hero with no fear toward the only destination he had ever intended. Chapter 4. The Dark Bargain. The war had raged for 3 years when the dream first came. It was not a memory, not a vision of battle, but something far more intimate and far more cruel. Padme was there, her face pale beneath the weight of some unseen sickness, her breath ragged, her hands trembling as if the life was slipping from her even as she reached for him, and Anakin stood helpless, unable to stop it. He woke, gasping, sweat on his skin despite the cool Coruscant night, his heart pounding like the engines of a starship at full burn. He told himself it was only a dream, but he had seen the future before. He had felt it in flashes, in moments that later came true with unnerving precision. The Padre's victory, his mother's death, the Force had whispered both to him before they happened. This dream felt the same. It was not fantasy. It was a warning. Night after night, the vision returned. Sometimes it ended in Padme's scream, sometimes in silence, always with her gone, and always with his hands empty. The Jedi taught that the future was in motion, that to cling to a vision was to invite fear, and fear was the path to the dark side. But Anakin was no longer a boy listening to lessons in the temple. He was a man who had already lost too much. He would not lose her. It was then that Chancellor Palpatine's voice began to change. In the privacy of his office, away from the Senate's marble halls, his words took on a tone of quiet conspiracy. He spoke of the war, yes, but also of power, not as a tool of domination, but as a means to an end. He told Anakin that the Jedi did not hold the monopoly on wisdom, that there were other traditions, other truths, hidden because they frightened those who clung to order. And one evening, beneath the warm light of the Chancellor's office, Palpatine told him a story, the story of Darth Plagueis, the Wise. He spoke of a Sith Lord so powerful in the Force that he could influence the very midichlorians to create life, and that he could prevent the ones he loved from dying. He spoke of the tragedy of his apprentice, who learned all he knew and then killed him in his sleep. His voice was low, almost reverent, the kind of voice one used when sharing a sacred truth. Anakin sat in silence, the words curling into his thoughts like smoke. Prevent death, save Padme. No Jedi had ever offered such power. But the Sith could. Palpatine never said the offer outright, but it was there in the air between them. A promise unspoken. Stay close to me, and I will show you how. The days that followed blurred together. The war reached its fever pitch. Anakin was given a seat on the Jedi Council, a gesture from Palpatine himself, but the Council, wary of the Chancellor's influence, denied him the rank of Master. It was a public insult, a deliberate humiliation, and it worked. Anakin's trust in them cracked further. Then came the order from the Council to spy on Palpatine, not to protect him, but to watch him, to betray the man who had guided him, supported him, believed in him when others doubted. It was not the Jedi way, they said. It was necessary. The noose tightened. That night, he found himself back in the Chancellor's office, the great windows framing the city's endless lights. The air was thick with the hum of silence, the kind of silence that carried weight. Palpatine turned from the view, his hands clasped behind his back, and spoke with deliberate calm. You want to know how to save her, don't you? The room seemed to shrink. Anakin's breath caught. Palpatine's eyes, calm, patient, but impossibly sharp, fixed on his end. Then the truth came, without flourish, without pretense. I know how, but my knowledge is not of the Jedi. There it was, the fork in the road, the final veil pulled away. To save Padme, he would have to walk a path the Jedi forbade. To refuse would be to accept the dream as prophecy. Anakin felt the walls closing in. The Council had turned against him. The war was tearing the galaxy apart, and the woman he loved was slipping away in a vision he could not escape. In that moment, the choice was no longer between light and dark. It was between life and death, between power and helplessness. The decision came not with a shout, but with a single, quiet breath. And in that breath, the galaxy shifted. Palpatine smiled. Not the warm, paternal smile he had worn for years, but the thin, knowing smile of a man who had won a game no one else realized they were playing. His voice was soft, almost tender. I will teach you everything. The bargain was struck. Not in blood, but in fear. Not in anger, but in love. The Republic would never recover. Chapter 5. The Fall at the Temple Gates. The night air over Coruscant was thick with rainless clouds, the kind that pressed down on the city as if to smother it. Lightning flashed somewhere beyond the Senate district, briefly illuminating the spires of the Jedi Temple. From the steps below, the great towers looked eternal, unshakable, the heart of the order that had stood for 1,000 years. But tonight, the heart would stop. The council chambers were empty. Many masters had been sent to the front lines on urgent missions. Missions carefully orchestrated by Chancellor Palpatine. Inside his private office, he no longer wore the mask. Sidious stood in the light of the great window, his hood casting deep shadows over the scars that marred his face. Anakin knelt before him, head bowed, the scent of rain and ozone clinging to his robes. "Do what must be done," Sidious whispered. "Do not hesitate. Show no mercy." The words slid into Anakin like a blade. Some part of him recoiled, the part that had once believed the Jedi were his family, that the temple was his home. But that part was buried now, smothered beneath the vision of Padme dying, beneath the promise that only Sidious could keep her alive. And so the order was given. And so the gates would fall. The 501st Legion moved through the temple's outer halls like a river of blue and white armor, blasters held ready. The hum of repulsor lifts and the clatter of boots echoed off the stone, a sound that had once signaled protection, now heralding execution. Behind them, his hood drawn low, walked Anakin Skywalker. To the clones, he was their general, their hero. To the Jedi, he was the executioner they never expected. The first resistance came from a pair of temple guards. They ignited their yellow blades, demanding to know what this meant, what treachery was at hand. Anakin's own saber hissed to life in answer. The clash was brief. One fell, then the other, their bodies crumpling beneath the gaze of their own comrades in dash arms. Word spread quickly through the temple intruders. Betrayal, fighting in the halls. Younglings huddled in the creche. Knights rallied in the training rooms. But the 501st was relentless, their advance methodical. Every corridor became a killing ground in the archives. Jedi scholars tried to shield priceless holocrons from destruction, only to be cut down where they stood. In the meditation chambers, masters were struck before they could even rise from their seats. The silence of the temple was broken forever, replaced by blaster fire, by the hum of sabers, by the screams of the dying. Anakin moved through it all like a shadow made flesh. His strikes were precise, economical, merciless. He did not fight for glory, he fought for the promise. Every life taken, every ally cut down, was one step closer to the knowledge Sidious had promised, the knowledge to save her. And yet, every step also carried him further from who he had been. Outside the council chambers, a group of younglings gathered, their small faces pale in the flickering light. One boy stepped forward. "Master Skywalker, what are we going to do?" The question pierced something in him. For a moment, the storm in his mind faltered, but only for a moment. The door shut behind him, and the light from within went out. Hours passed. The great gates of the temple, once open to all who sought peace, lay shattered. The smoke of battle clung to the air. The marble floors were streaked with ash and blood. The Jedi Order, the guardians of the Republic for over 1,000 years, had been slaughtered in their own home. From the highest balcony, Anakin looked out over Coruscant. The city glowed as it always had, oblivious to the horror that had unfolded at its heart. Behind him, the temple burned in places, its great spires blackened by smoke. In that smoke, The name Anakin Skywalker was already fading. When the last resistance was gone, he returned to Sidious. The Sith Lord's approval was not given in words, but in the subtle satisfaction that radiated from him like a cold flame. "You have done well, Lord Vader," he said at last, the name settling over Anakin like a final shroud. It was done. The gates had fallen. The Order was dead. And in the shadow of the temple's ruins, a new empire began to rise. Chapter 6. The Birth of the Black Mask Mustafar. Burned. The planet's surface was a hellscape of rivers and seas of molten rock, the air thick with heat and ash, the sky a constant churn of smoke. It was here, at the edge of the galaxy and the edge of sanity, that Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader in all but form, came to end what remained of his old life. The separatist leaders waited for him in the control room of a fortress suspended above the lava flows. Their fear was immediate. They had been told the war was ending, that they were safe under the protection of the new empire. But the blue blade of his lightsaber told a different story. It was over in minutes. Blaster fire filled the air, but his movements were impossible to follow. The hum of his blade, the screams, the clash of boots against metal, and then silence. The war, at least in name, was finished. The galaxy would belong to Sidious now. And then she came. Padme's ship broke through the choking atmosphere, silver against the blood-red sky. She ran to him on the landing platform, tears already bright in her eyes. She had heard the whispers, the rumors of what he had done at the temple, and she did not want to believe them. But the man before her was not the boy from Tatooine, nor the husband she had married in secret. He was colder now, eyes sharp and distant. His words edged with something she had never heard before, certainty without compassion. She pleaded with him to turn back. He told her it was too late. The Republic was gone, the Jedi were traitors, and together they could rule the galaxy. Her face broke as if he had struck her. Behind her, Obi-Wan stepped down from the ship. Anakin's rage ignited like the lava around them. The betrayal cut deep. Not just Padme's, but Obi-Wan's, the man he had called brother, the one who had stood beside him in every trial, was now his enemy. The duel began without ceremony. Their blades clashed in sparks and heat, each strike, ringing with years of trust and love, shattered in an instant. The fight spilled across catwalks, into control rooms, out over the roaring lava. It was not just skill that drove them, it was grief, fury, and the unbearable weight of knowing only one would walk away. They moved as though mirrors, each knowing the other's patterns, counters, and feints. The heat scorched their skin, sweat mixing with ash. The metal beneath their feet groaned as the fortress shuddered from the violence. Anakin fought with raw power, every strike meant to break, to dominate. Obi-Wan fought with precision, every move a defense, a plea for his brother to stop. But neither stopped. The duel reached the narrow bank of a lava river. Obi-Wan leaped to the higher ground, his blade ready. "It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground." But Anakin's pride had long since drowned in his need to win. "You underestimate my power." He leaped, and in that leap, everything ended. Obi-Wan's blade cut true, severing both legs and his remaining organic arm in a single, merciful stroke. Anakin hit the ground hard, rolling toward the river's edge. The heat from the molten rock seared his skin before the flames touched him. And then they did. The scream that tore from his throat was not human. It was pain and fury, loss and betrayal, all given voice in one unending howl. Obi-Wan stood frozen, the smell of burning flesh filling the air, until at last he turned away, unable to deliver the final blow. He left Anakin there, a broken thing on the shore of fire. When Anakin awoke, the world was different. The ceiling above him was sterile white. The air was cold, and many things were inside him. He could not move. He could not see clearly. His body was wrapped in restraints while machines worked around him, sealing what remained of him into armor. The hiss of mechanical limbs echoed in the chamber. Durasteel plates locked into place over his chest, his arms, his legs. Wires fused with nerves. A respirator clamped over what was left of his mouth. And then, at last, the mask descended. Black, featureless, implacable. It sealed over his head with a hiss of pressure, and the world became the sound of his own breathing, deep, mechanical, eternal. Darth Vader took his first breath. Sidious stood beside him, watching the transformation with satisfaction. "How do you feel, my apprentice?" he asked, the words mocking in their gentleness. Anakin's voice emerged, distorted by the mask, a hollow echo of the man he had been. "Where is Padmé?" Sidious's answer was smooth, deliberate, it seems. "In your anger, you killed her." The words landed like another blade. The room tilted, the machines rattled as Vader's rage surged outward in the Force, crushing equipment, shattering glass. The scream that followed was no longer human, and it never would be again. The man called Anakin Skywalker was gone. Only the shadow remained. Chapter 7: Purges of Blood and Sinister. Galaxy no longer remembers the Jedi. It remembers only the whispers, once. Their light burned from one end of the core worlds to the outer rim. 1,000 temples and enclaves humming with the calm discipline of the Force. Now those halls are silent. Cold monuments swallowed by dust and darkness. The Order's name survives only as a curse, spat from the mouths of Imperial officers. When speaking of traitors and sorcerers, on 1,000 worlds, children are told stories of Jedi only as cautionary tales. Tales of rebels who dared defy the Emperor and were rightly destroyed. The truth is buried in shadow, and the shadow wears a mask. Vader's presence spreads like the night itself. Entire sectors fall silent when his flagship emerges from hyperspace. To the governors of the Empire, he is a hand of iron, a weapon of the Emperor's will. To the survivors of the Purge, he is death incarnate, the blade that ended their brothers and sisters. But Vader's campaign is not a hunt for the living alone. It is a hunt for memory. The Emperor commands not only the destruction of bodies, but the erasure of the very idea of the Jedi. Records are purged from archives. Temples are stripped to bare stone, their artifacts and holocrons claimed for Imperial security vanishing into secret vaults beneath Coruscant. Even the names of fallen Jedi Masters are removed from public memory. The galaxy is taught to forget, and in the forgetting, fear grows. On the capital world, deep in the sublevels of the Imperial Palace, Vader walks alone through the forbidden archives. They are not the Republic's neat and ordered repositories of lore and history. They are a labyrinth of shadow, a place where knowledge has been stolen and locked away. The air smells of ancient dust and ozone. Shelves rise like black cliffs, their datacrons glowing faintly in the gloom. Most have not been touched in centuries. Here are the records of empires older than the Republic, the scriptures of forgotten religions, the war diaries of Sith lords, whose names were erased from history. The Jedi had sealed much of it away, guarding the galaxy from its poison. Now it belongs to the Empire, and Vader reads, The mask hides his eyes, but his mind reaches into every page and fragment. He studies teachings from a time before the rule of two, philosophies of the dark side unshaped by modern Sith dogma. He reads of rituals in which entire worlds were bound to a will, of weapons that fed not on kyber crystals but on living souls. In these archives, he learns of Sith who became gods to their followers, and of others who burned themselves out in madness. The Emperor encourages this study, for knowledge is power. But Sidious never gives without taking. Every scroll, every artifact, every scrap of Sith wisdom is offered as both gift and chain. Vader knows this. In every lesson lies a warning, in every truth a test. Beyond the archives, the galaxy burns. Quietly, the last pockets of Jedi resistance are snuffed out with precision. In the Outer Rim, a Jedi healer is betrayed by the villagers she once saved, handed over to Imperial Inquisitors in exchange for food rations. In the core, a lone knight is cornered in a spaceport hangar. The lightsaber duel lasts less than a minute. The bodies vanish into the night. No public trials, no official proclamations, only silence. The kind that follows a scream swallowed by the void. The purge is no longer a war. It is a slow frost creeping into every corner, suffocating. The embers of what once was, and yet, somewhere in the blackness, the Force stirs. There are whispers among the Imperial ranks of Force-sensitive children being quietly taken from their homes. Officially, they are sent to special academies. In truth, most never return. Those with strength enough are broken and remade in the image of the Inquisitors, tools of the dark side, loyal only to the Emperor. Those who cannot be turned are simply erased. The Empire grows. It grows in ships and soldiers, in fleets of cold steel that blot out suns. But it grows also in silence, the silence left when a people are robbed of their past. Every temple torn down, every scroll burned, every child taken. All serve the same purpose. The purpose is control. On the balcony of the Emperor's spire, Vader looks out at Coruscant's endless cityscape. The night air hums with the noise of billions, but none of it touches him. His gaze is fixed not on the city, but on the stars beyond. The countless worlds now bound to the will of two Sith Lords. Two for now, for, in the cold archives below, the mask of Vader hides a truth. He is learning not only what his master teaches, but what his master fears. He is searching for the places in the old texts where the Emperor has not looked, where power waits for one bold enough to take it. The purge is nearly complete. The Jedi are a fading echo, but in the silence they leave behind, something is coming. A shadow within the shadow. And when it arrives, the galaxy will remember the Jedi once more. Chapter 8. The hidden hand of the Emperor, the Emperor's throne, is not merely a seat of power, it is the heart of a web spun across the galaxy. From its black seat, in the highest spire of the Imperial Palace, Darth Sidious rules with hands no one sees. The galaxy believes the Emperor governs through armies, star destroyers, governors, and decrees. That is the visible empire, a vast machine of steel and discipline, where every gear turns at his command. But beneath that surface lies a second empire, older and far more dangerous, an empire of secrets. It is this hidden dominion that sustains the first. Sidious's true weapons are not fleets, but shadows. He deals in whispers, traded between smugglers in Outer Rim cantinas, coded messages carried by agents who vanish between worlds, and debts owed by those who would never admit they serve him. The Senate stripped of its power, yet still allowed to meet, serves as one of his favorite hunting grounds for secrets. Senators scheme and conspire, thinking themselves free, yet every word spoken in confidence is heard by the Emperor. Vader serves as the blade, but Sidious is the unseen hand that guides it. In the deepest vaults of Coruscant, the Emperor gathers relics that would be forbidden under any other rule. Fragments of Sith holocrons shattered by Jedi long ago. The bones of alien creatures extinct. For millennia, their forms twisted by the dark side. Statues that seem to watch those who pass. All of it collected, catalogued and studied, not merely as artifacts, but as weapons in the making. Sidious does not hoard for the sake of possession. Every relic has a purpose. Some will serve as tools in rituals yet to come. Others will never leave the vaults. Their power too dangerous to risk. For now, among these treasures are scrolls, written in tongues, forgotten even by the Sith. Sidious reads them with care, learning from those who ruled empires when humanity was still young. He learns of rituals that combine the will of entire populations, of machines that feed on the life energy of worlds. He learns also of the fragility of power, how even the mightiest Sith fell when they allowed sentiment to soften their rule. These lessons he takes to heart. For all his knowledge, Sidious trusts no one, not even his apprentice. Vader is permitted to see certain relics, to learn certain truths, but the Emperor never shows him everything. Where Vader seeks strength, in the ancient teachings, Sidious seeks control. The leash he has placed upon his apprentice is short, forged of manipulation and necessity, yet Sidious knows the nature of the Sith. Apprentices are meant to betray their masters. This is not a flaw, but a law. He expects the attempt. In truth, he prepares for it, shaping Vader's ambitions so that when the blade finally turns, the Emperor will already hold the Counterstroke. Meanwhile, beyond the palace walls, the galaxy is shaped by the Emperor's hidden hand. Rebellions are not merely crushed, they are cultivated, allowed to grow just large enough to draw out potential enemies, then cut down. Entire systems are baited into resisting, only for their leaders to be replaced with Imperial loyalists indebted to the throne. Fear is the outer shell of the Empire. Deception is its core. In the mid-rim, a planetary ruler finds her son kidnapped by pirates. The ransom is paid not in credits, but in allegiance to the Empire. In the core worlds, a merchant house is accused of treason. Their competitors, all loyal to Sidious, take their place overnight. In the outer rim, an upstart warlord rises against Imperial forces, only for it to be revealed, much later, that he was an agent of the Emperor from the beginning. His defeat, staged to draw other insurgents into the open, and always. Vader moves like a storm across the galaxy, sometimes knowing, sometimes unknowing, that his master's designs are being served. The Emperor rarely leaves his throne, but when he does, it is for matters that touch upon his greatest obsession. Immortality. For Sidious, rulership of the galaxy is not the end, it is the beginning. To rule forever, he must transcend flesh. His search takes him to laboratories where science and sorcery mingle, to desolate worlds where ancient spirits whisper, to temples long abandoned where the air itself is heavy with the presence of the dark side. In these places, his agents recover fragments of knowledge no Jedi would dare to touch. Some are brought to Vader, others hidden from him. Sidious alone will decide which truths his apprentice is allowed to see, and which would give him the power to break his chains. Yet, For all his mastery, Sidious knows there is danger on the horizon. He has seen it in the currents of the Force, a presence that moves beyond his reach. It is faint now, a flicker in the dark, but growing. The Emperor does not fear it, not yet, but he marks it, and he begins to weave the first threads of a trap that will take years to close. For Sidious is patient. His greatest victories are those no one sees until it is far too late. In the end, it is not the roar of star destroyers that keeps the galaxy. Under his rule, it is the quiet, the silence between worlds, the invisible weight on every mind that dares imagine freedom. His enemies die not with the crash of armies, but with the whisper of a door locking behind them. And so the galaxy turns, the people living their lives unaware that their destinies are shaped by a hand they will never see. Above it all, the Emperor waits, smiling in the shadows, knowing that when the time comes, every piece on the board will be exactly where he desires. The Empire grows, and its master's grip tightens, unseen. Chapter 9. The architect of Fear the Galaxy sees the Death Star as a weapon. The Emperor sees it as a sermon. To the Outer Rim, it is a new terror. To the core worlds, a symbol of unshakable rule. But to Sidious, the Death Star is not merely a machine, it is a ritual. A work of dark architecture designed to reshape the galaxy's soul. Its birth is hidden in plain sight. The plans are scattered across countless Imperial facilities, each piece meaningless without the others. Scientists labor on reactor schematics, engineers on superlaser focusing arrays, starship yards on the skeletal frame. Few understand what they are building. Fewer still understand its purpose. Only those in the Emperor's inner circle grasp the truth, that this station is meant not only to destroy, but to indoctrinate. Darth Vader oversees much of its construction. His presence on the work crew's decks is rare, but when he appears, the effect is immediate. Supervisors work without rest. Officers triple their efforts. Even the slaves, political prisoners, dissidents, and worlds that resisted Imperial rule labor in silence, knowing that to falter is to die. Yet the Death Star is more than a super weapon. It is the embodiment of an idea. The galaxy has always known war. Republic against separatists, pirates against trade routes, warlords against local governments. These were conflicts that flared and faded, their scope limited. But the Death Star changes everything. It tells the galaxy that resistance is not a battle, but a sentence. That to defy the Emperor is to be erased, not defeated, not conquered. Erased. The day of Alderaan's destruction is the day the ritual is complete. The superlaser fires. An emerald beam splits the void, converges into a single point, and blossoms into light. The planet shatters. Its mountains, seas, and cities dissolve into dust. In moments, an entire world, its history, its culture, its billions of voices, is gone. The soundless scream that follows is felt through the Force like a wound torn into reality itself. Across the galaxy, sensitives, Jedi in hiding, adepts of forgotten orders, children who do not yet know their nature, feel the shock. For many, it is the first time they understand the scale of the Emperor's will. Fear spreads faster than the blast wave ever could. Worlds far from Alderaan whisper the name Death Star in awe and terror. Senators who once dared to speak against Imperial overreach fall silent. Rebel cells dissolve overnight, their leaders abandoning the cause rather than invite annihilation. Has given the galaxy a new language, and that language is fear. In the Emperor's throne room, The destruction of Alderaan is a quiet victory. Sidious does not celebrate. He savors. Fear, once planted, must be nurtured. He watches the ripples in the galactic order, sees how systems shift allegiance without a single Star Destroyer dispatched. He sees governors enforce loyalty with nothing more than a whispered reminder of Alderaan. But the Death Star is not without risk. It is a single point of power, and thus a single point of failure. Sidious knows this. The station is formidable, but it is not invincible. In its very existence lies a challenge. Somewhere, someone will try to destroy it. This, too, the Emperor plans for. If the rebellion is to rise, he will choose when and how, so that their destruction serves him. Vader, for his part, sees the Death Star differently. He understands its power, but he does not worship it. In his eyes, true strength lies in mastery of the Force, not in machines, no matter how vast. Yet he obeys his master's will, for now. His presence aboard the station ensures discipline, but also allows him to watch, to learn the rhythms of Imperial command, the weaknesses of those who serve. The rebellion, though wounded, is not extinguished. In the shadows of the galaxy, they gather, driven not only by anger, but by the knowledge that survival now demands resistance. The destruction of Alderaan does not silence them all. For some, it is a call to arms. Sidious understands this as well and allows it. A rebellion without hope is no rebellion at all. It is prey waiting to be culled. In the weeks that follow, the Death Star becomes legend. Its image appears on Imperial propaganda, the great sphere looming over worlds, casting them in shadow. Imperial officers speak of it as the ultimate guarantee of order, the perfect deterrent. The Emperor speaks little of it, letting the galaxy's imagination magnify its dread. Yet in private, among the Emperor's most trusted agents, the truth is known. The Death Star is but the first. Plans for a second station already lie in the Emperor's vaults, larger, stronger, and armed with the lessons of the first. Sidious is not building merely for the present war, but for an eternity of rule. Fear, once made manifest, must be made eternal, and so the Death Star hangs in the void, a silent god of destruction, worshipped by some, feared by all. It is a weapon. Yes, but more than that, it is the architecture of obedience. Every orbit it completes, every shadow it casts, deepens the galaxy's submission to the Emperor's will. But in the far reaches of the galaxy, beyond the reach of Imperial patrols, the seeds of defiance are taking root. A rebel fleet gathers in secret. A pilot with nothing to lose learns of a weakness, and in the currents of the Force, a presence grows, one that neither Sidious nor Vader can yet name. The Death Star was built to end all hope, but in its shadow, hope begins to burn. Chapter 10: The Son of the Fallen On, a desert world at the edge of the Outer Rim. The galaxy's greatest secret grows in the shadow of twin suns. Tatooine is a place the Empire barely remembers, a dust-choked wasteland, too poor to tax heavily, too far to control tightly. Its people live hard, quiet lives, measured in credits and water rations, unaware that destiny has chosen one of their own. Luke Skywalker is a farm boy, a mechanic, a dreamer. He has never seen the core worlds, never fought in the Clone Wars, never even met a Jedi. His life is a repetition of chores and sunsets, of sand and silence. Yet in his dreams there is motion, flashes of battles in the stars, the hum of a lightsaber, the whisper of a voice he cannot name. The galaxy has all but forgotten the prophecy. Long ago, In the age of the Republic, the Jedi spoke of one who would bring balance to the Force. Some believed it to mean the destruction of the Sith. Others, a restoration of harmony between light and dark. The Jedi sought the Chosen One, and in Anakin Skywalker, they believed they had found him. They were wrong, or so it seemed. Anakin fell, became Vader, and the prophecy faded into myth. But prophecies do not die. They wait. The boy's path begins with loss. A message hidden in a droid. A meeting with an old hermit who is far more than he seems. The fire of stormtroopers consuming his home. Luke's world ends in a night of flame, and from its ashes a choice emerges, to remain in the safety of obscurity, or to step into a galaxy at war. He chooses the latter. Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan, once general of the Jedi Order, places into Luke's hands the weapon of his father. The blue blade ignites with a sound like memory itself, and in that moment, Luke takes his first step onto a path woven long before his birth. Obi-Wan speaks of the Force, of destiny, of the truth hidden in Luke's blood. But not all truths are told, not yet far away. In the Emperor's palace, the currents of the Force shift. Sidious feels a ripple, faint but insistent. It is not merely another Force-sensitive awakening. It is something older, deeper. It is the echo of a name he thought extinguished. Vader feels it too. The sensation is distant, but sharp, like the glint of a blade far off in the dark. He does not yet know its source, but in the hollow place where Anakin Skywalker once lived, something stirs. The rebellion is where Luke's journey truly begins. On Yavin 4, among pilots and soldiers who have no idea who he is, Luke finds a cause that is larger than himself. He learns the basics of flight, of trust, of courage. His first battle in the Death Star Trench is not merely a military engagement. It is the moment the Force truly reaches for him. Obi-Wan's voice guides him, even in death, and Luke fires the shot that changes the course of the war. The Emperor is enraged, but Sidious is also intrigued. Here is one with power, one with instinct, one who can destroy his works. Such beings are rare and, in the Emperor's mind, best turned rather than slain. For Vader, intrigue gives way to revelation. Investigations into the pilot's identity bring him face to face with the truth. The boy is Luke Skywalker, son of Anakin, his son. The name is a blade through the armor he has worn for 2 decades. Memories long buried, the sound of a child's cry, the touch of a hand, the promise he made to Palm, surge against the walls he has built within himself. Vader had believed that part of his life destroyed with her death. Now he knows it lives. The prophecy breathes again. But whose prophecy? Is it now? To Obi-Wan, Luke is the galaxy's last hope, the one who can finish what the Jedi began. To Sidious, he is a potential heir, one who could replace the apprentice he knows will one day betray him. To Vader, he is something more complicated, a bridge between the man he was and the Sith he has become. Luke knows none of this. He only knows that the war is far from over, that the Empire will strike back harder than ever. He trains as best he can, guided by fragments of Jedi teaching, his own instincts, and the mysterious pull of the Force. Each step forward draws the attention of both master and apprentice. In the shadows, Sidious begins to weave the boy into his plans. Vader begins to plan in turn, imagining a future where father and son ruled the galaxy together, and the Force watches, impassive as its threads tighten around all three. The son of The fallen has entered the stage. The galaxy will never be the same. Chapter 11. Duel of Blood and Truth. The air in Cloud City is heavy with more than steam and metal. It is heavy with destiny. Luke Skywalker steps into the carbon-freezing chamber, lightsaber in hand, unaware of just how deep the trap runs. He came here to save his friends, but the path he walks now is older than friendship, older than the rebellion, older even than the Empire itself. It is the path of the Force, and at its end stands Darth Vader. The chamber glows with the hellish light of molten carbon. Shadows stretch long and jagged across the floor. Vader emerges from one of them, black armor gleaming, his breathing loud and inescapable. There are no words of warning, only the hum of red plasma igniting, cutting through the darkness. Luke answers with the snap hiss of his own blade. Blue meets red, and the duel begins. Vader's strikes are measured, probing, not meant to kill. Not yet. He tests the boy's reflexes, his courage, his anger. Luke fights with the raw energy of youth, driven by the need to protect, the refusal to yield, but skill is not enough. Vader is the embodiment of decades of combat, the culmination of Jedi discipline and Sith ferocity. The clash of sabers is more than a battle of flesh and metal. It is the Force itself in conflict, light and dark intertwining, each seeking to bend the other. Sparks fly from the walls, metal groans, steam hisses, yet beneath it all runs a deeper current, one neither fully understands. Vader presses Luke hard, herding him through the chamber. His voice is calm, almost instructive. You have learned much, young one. Luke's reply is defiant. You'll find I'm full of surprises. Vader smiles behind the mask, a rare, cruel satisfaction. The boy's spirit is strong, strong enough to shape. The duel spills out into the corridors of Cloud City, each strike ringing like a drumbeat of fate. Vader begins to push harder, using the Force not only to fight, but to unsettle. Crates hurtle toward Luke. A wall panel tears free in a shower of sparks. The battle is not merely physical now, it is psychological. Vader offers more than death. He offers understanding, power, a place at his side. You have controlled your fear. Now release your anger. Only your hatred can destroy me. Luke resists, but the words take root. Anger sharpens his strikes, lends strength to his parries. For a moment, he drives Vader back, but the Sith Lord is only toying with him. With a sudden surge, Vader disarms him, forcing him toward the gantry high above the city's central chasm. Here, the duel reaches its heart. Every swing now is heavy with intent. Vader's power crashes down like a storm. Luke's will pushes back like a tide. In the Force, the connection between them burns brighter. Vader feels the truth he has carried since their first meeting. This is no mere opponent. This is his blood, his son, his legacy, and then the strike. Vader's blade shears through Luke's defense, severing his right hand. The lightsaber, the same one Anakin Skywalker once wielded, tumbles into the abyss. Luke staggers back, gripping the railing, breath ragged, pain searing through him. Vader steps forward, his voice low but unyielding. There is no escape. Don't make me destroy you. Luke glares through the agony, defiant even now. Vader's next words are not an order, but an invitation. Luke, you can destroy the Emperor. He has foreseen this. It is your destiny. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. It is a moment decades in the making. Vader offers not merely power, but a vision, a galaxy remade under their will. The Skywalker line restored, not as Jedi or Sith, but as rulers. Luke's heart pounds. He sees the trap, yet feels the pull. He has dreamed of his father all his life, imagined him as a hero, a protector. Now he stands before the truth, twisted, armored, and reaching out to him. "I'll never join you." Vader's tone shifts. The words he speaks next are a blade sharper than any lightsaber. "If you only knew the power of the dark side. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father." Luke's voice is cold. "He told me enough. He told me you killed him, and then the truth. No, I am your father." The Force itself seems to still. The words are not a taunt, not a deception. They are the unvarnished truth laid bare. Luke's mind reels. Memories of Ben's guarded answers, of unanswered questions about his past, crash against the present moment. The man who cut off his hand, who serves the tyrant he swore to fight, is his father. Vader extends his hand once more. "Come with me, it is the only way." Luke looks at that hand, at the black armor, at the abyss below, and he makes his choice. He lets go. The wind tears at him as he falls, not into Vader's grasp, but into the unknown. He would rather face death than the corruption of his father's path. Yet the choice is not without its cost, for, as he plummets, he carries the weight of that truth, the knowledge that the blood of Darth Vader runs in his veins. Far above, Vader watches him vanish into the storm. For the first time in years, he feels something he cannot control. Loss. The duel is over. But the war between them has only begun. Chapter 12. The Web of Betrayal. The throne room is a place of shadows. Shadows that listen. Shadows that wait. Shadows that belong to the Emperor alone. Darth Sidious sits upon the black throne as if it were carved from the void itself. The vast chamber is silent but for the distant hum of the Death Star's core and the slow, rhythmic breath of Darth Vader at his side. Before them, Luke Skywalker is brought in, hands bound, clothes torn, yet eyes bright with defiance. This is no mere prisoner's audience. It is the culmination of years of planning. Sidious speaks first, his voice a serpent's whisper wrapped in velvet. "Welcome, young Skywalker. I have been expecting you." The boy does not bow. He does not look away. The Force coils between them like a drawn bowstring. Sidious savors it, the tension, the conflict, the raw power hidden beneath. Luke's restraint. He sees what Vader sees. A weapon not yet forged. A blade that could cut through the galaxy itself. Vader steps forward, his presence looming like a black eclipse. He is both jailer and father, protector and predator. Luke's gaze flickers toward him, a flash of recognition of the truth revealed on Cloud City. It is a truth that has poisoned every thought since Sidious rises from the throne, each step deliberate. He does not need to shout. The room bends around his voice. "Strike me down. Fulfill your destiny. Take your father's place at my side." Luke's anger simmers. He thinks of his friends, of the rebellion, of the billions who live under the shadow of the Empire. He thinks of the hand he lost and the man who took it. His eyes fall on the lightsaber resting on the Emperor's armrest. His father's old weapon now within reach. The Emperor watches the temptation work, as it always does. But there is another presence in this game, the one who has served at Sidious's side for decades. Vader stands silent, yet every word spoken is a knife in his mind. He remembers Mustafar. He remembers the chains he accepted in the name of power. He remembers the promise he made to himself, that when the moment came, he would not be the one betrayed. He would be the one who struck first. Sidious knows this too. The Sith rule by betrayal, and the only question is timing. He has prepared for Vader's treachery, just as he has prepared for Luke's defiance. Every move is calculated, so that whichever choice the boy makes, light or dark, father or master, it will be the Emperor's victory. The battle above Endor rages on. Star destroyers burn. Rebel fighters dive through the chaos, hunted by TIE interceptors. The Death Star's super laser cuts ships from the void. But here, in the throne room, another war is being fought. One of wills, of loyalties, of blood. Sidious continues to pour poison into Luke's ears. Witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station. Your fleet is lost, and your friends will not survive. Only I can save them. The words are bait. The boy's emotions churn fear for his friends, anger at the Emperor, the pull of the dark side offering the power to end it all. Vader feels the storm inside him and recognizes it. He once stood in that place. He knows what comes next. Luke's control snaps. The green blade ignites. He strikes not at Vader, but at the Emperor. Sidious is ready. The lightning arcs from his fingers, but before it strikes, Vader's red blade intercepts Luke's. Father and son clash once more, their sabers ringing through the chamber. This duel is different from Bespin. Luke is stronger. Now his strikes heavier, his connection to the Force deeper. Vader answers with precision, not underestimating him this time. Every blow Luke lands is a rejection. Every parry Vader makes is a plea, unspoken but present. Join me. The Emperor watches, smiling. To him, this is the final act. He will have an apprentice when this is over. The only question is which Skywalker it will be. Luke drives Vader back, with a ferocity born of desperation. The memory of his friends dying above Endor fuels him. His blade crashes down again and again until Vader stumbles, his defenses faltering. With one last surge of strength, Luke severs his father's hand, the same hand Vader took from him. The red lightsaber falls to the floor, hissing against the metal. Luke stands over him, chest heaving, weapon raised for the final blow. The Emperor leans forward, eyes alight. Good, good, kill him. Take his place by my side. In that moment, Luke sees the truth. The web of betrayal spun around him. He sees himself standing where Vader stands, sees the mask on his own face, the chains on his own soul, and he lets the vision die. The green blade deactivates. Never, I'll never turn to the dark side. I am a Jedi, like my father before me. Sidious's smile fades. In its place comes wrath, pure, unfiltered, and absolute. Lightning explodes from his hands, hurling Luke to the floor. The boy writhes under its power. The air thick with the stench of burning cloth and flesh. Vader watches. The choice he has avoided for 2 decades now stands before him. Master or son, chains or freedom. The dark side whispers to let the boy die, to seize the throne in the Emperor's wake. But beneath the mask, Anakin Skywalker stirs, the man who once loved, once dreamed, once swore to protect. The Emperor's laughter fills the chamber, drowning out Luke's cries. And then Vader moves. The black figure rises, seizes Sidious in both hands, and lifts him from the floor. Lightning flares wildly, scorching armor, searing flesh. Sidious's scream is the sound of centuries ending. With a final, shattering effort, Vader hurls him into the reactor shaft. The Emperor falls, vanishing in a storm of light. Silence follows, broken only by Vader's labored breathing. Luke kneels beside him. The mask turns toward him, and for the first time, the voice inside is not the voice of Vader. You were right. You were right about me. Tell your sister you were right. The web of betrayal collapses. The Emperor is gone. The Father is redeemed. The Son survives, but the cost will echo across the stars. Chapter 13. The fall of the Emperor. Lightning tore across the air, blinding white and bluer than the ice on Hoth. The throne room shook with the violence of it, the smell of scorched ozone clinging to every breath. The shadows cast by the Emperor's throne stretched and twisted like claws, reaching for the boy writhing beneath them. Luke Skywalker's body convulsed as the Force lightning surged into him. Each arc was a spear of agony, ripping through muscle and nerve, tearing at the edges of his mind. His voice broke into a scream, yet still he would not yield. Sidious laughter cut through the air, cold and brittle. Your feeble skills are no match for the power of the dark side. He leaned forward on the throne, skeletal fingers splayed, lightning flowing like an unending river of hate. Vader stood at the foot of the stairs, unmoving. His breath rasped slow, mechanical, in, out. A rhythm that had been his life's metronome for decades. Yet beneath the steel, something churned. He watched the Emperor, his master, reduce Luke to a broken silhouette framed in light, and for the first time in years, the weight of choice pressed against him. Father, please. Luke's voice was hoarse, barely audible over the storm, but it struck like a vibroblade between Vader's ribs. His master had promised him power, clarity, and an end to weakness. Yet here was weakness in its truest form. The inability to move, to act while his son was destroyed. The lightning flared again, and Luke's scream tore through the chamber. Something old stirred in Vader, not the obedient apprentice, not the enforcer of the Sith, not the machine, Anakin Skywalker. A face flickered in his mind, not Luke's, but Padme's. Her last words on Mustafar, they're still good in him. He had buried them long ago, under armor, under hate. But now they rang like a temple bell. The Emperor's glee rose to a fever pitch, drowning the room in a cacophony of lightning, laughter, and pain. Now, young Skywalker, you will die. Vader moved slow, at first the hesitation of decades, grinding against the will of a man reborn, then faster, the heavy steps of durasteel boots ringing against the polished floor. Sidious barely saw it coming. His attention was fixed on Luke, his mind too arrogant to imagine betrayal. A gloved hand clamped round the Emperor's arm. The lightning faltered. Sidious turned, eyes wide, disbelief flickering across the wrinkled ruin of his face. Vader didn't speak. He acted with a roar that was half mechanical growl, half human defiance. He lifted the Emperor from the ground. Lightning surged wildly, uncontrolled now, arcing into the walls, scorching the floor. Bolts struck Vader full in the chest, feeding through armor into flesh. The pain was everything. It burned through every nerve, clawed into every cell. Circuits fried, servos screamed, warning alerts blared inside his helmet. But the pain was no longer an enemy, it was fuel. The Emperor writhed, claws raking against Vader's armor, his voice shrieking curses in languages older than the Republic. The air reeked of burning metal and charred cloth. Vader took a step toward the abyss, the deep reactor shaft yawning at the throne room's edge. Sidious lightning blasted point-blank into his helmet, cooking the skin beneath. Vision flickered. Red, then white, then black. Every system screamed failure warnings, but Vader kept walking. 1 step, 2, 3. The Emperor's fear broke through his rage. No, no. Vader reached the edge. He looked into the endless darkness below, a darkness he had once embraced willingly. Then, without hesitation, he hurled the Emperor into it. Sidious fell, still screaming, lightning sparking wildly from his hands until he vanished into the abyss. The sound echoed, a dying storm retreating into the depths. Vader collapsed to his knees. His chest felt like it was caving in. His respirator rasped in shuddering, uneven bursts. The suit was failing. His body was failing. But the silence that followed was the purest thing he had heard in years. Luke dragged himself up from the floor, his body trembling from the aftershocks of the lightning. He stumbled toward his father, eyes wide with disbelief. "Father, I have to save you." Vader looked at him, not with the cold lenses of the mask, but with the weight of a man who had finally done the right thing, too late to save himself. "You already have." The throne room still smoked, the scent of ozone and burnt metal heavy in the air. Outside, the battle raged on, but inside, the prophecy had turned. The Emperor was gone. The Sith had been betrayed from within. And Anakin Skywalker, the man long buried, had made his final choice. It had come at a mortal cost. Chapter 14. The last breath of Darth Vader. The throne room was quieter now. Too quiet. The Emperor's lightning had scorched deep burns. Across the walls, the floor, and Luke's own robes. Smoke curled upward in slow, ghost-like tendrils, carrying the bitter tang of ozone. Outside, beyond the shattered viewport, the war for Endor raged, distant explosions blooming like dying stars. Vader was slumped on his knees, his massive frame hunched forward, as if the weight of years had suddenly come crashing down on him. Sparks hissed from the torn seams in his armor. The once imperious rhythm of his respirator, in out, now stuttered. Each breath a ragged struggle against inevitability. Luke stumbled to his side, still shaking from the Emperor's attack. "Father, you're going to be all right. I've got to get you out of here." Vader's head turned, the black lenses fixing on his son. But there was something different now. The cold dominance that had once defined their gaze was gone. What lingered instead was something softer and far more human. "You already have," he rasped. The words were heavy, mechanical, and yet the meaning beneath them was entirely his. Own Luke hooked an arm beneath Vader's shoulder, trying to lift him. The armor was impossibly heavy, and the man inside was a dead weight. But Luke would not leave him. "We can still make it," Luke said, his voice hardening with determination. "I'm not leaving you here." Vader's hand rose, slow, deliberate, and rested on Luke's arm. The gesture was almost gentle, but firm enough to halt him. "Luke, it is too late for me." The words sliced into Luke more than any blade could. He shook his head, refusing to accept them. "No, I can't just listen to me," Vader interrupted, though his voice trembled under the strain. "You must go. The station will not hold much longer, and I must face my end here." Luke's jaw tightened. "Then we'll face it together." Vader said nothing for a long moment, as if weighing the truth against what comfort a lie might bring. Then his gaze shifted toward the towering view beyond the throne room, the fire and chaos outside, the rebellion's desperate fight. You were right about me, he said at last. Tell your sister you were right. Luke froze. The galaxy seemed to still around those words. Leia, even in his dying breaths. Vader thought of her, though she did not yet know the truth of their blood. Then Vader's voice broke again, lower this time, almost pleading. Luke, help me. Take this mask off. Luke hesitated. But you'll die. Nothing can stop that now. A pause, filled with static-laced breathing. Just, for once, let me look on you, with my own eyes. Luke's hands trembled. The helmet, the respirator, the endless black, it had been the face of his enemy, his nightmare for as long as he could remember. And yet, now, it was simply the prison of a father who wanted to see his son. Carefully, Luke found the release. Catches, the seals hissed, releasing years of recycled air. The deep hum of the respirator began to fade. Piece by piece, the mask came apart. Beneath was not the fearsome visage of Darth Vader, but the pale, scarred face of a man's skin sallow, from decades without sunlight. Eyes tired, but filled with something Luke had never seen there before. Peace. A peace smile tugged at the corners of Anakin Skywalker's mouth. Now, go, my son. Leave me. Luke shook his head again, unable to keep the tears from his eyes. I won't leave you. Anakin's gaze lingered on him, memorizing every detail, every contour of his son's face, the last light he would carry into the darkness. You already have, Luke. You already have. The final breath he drew was uneven, almost silent, and then his body went still. The faint smile remained, frozen like the last warmth of a dying star. Luke lowered him gently to the floor. For a moment there was nothing but the quiet, a quiet so profound it felt like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Then Luke rose. The battle still raged, and the Death Star was beginning to shake with the warning groans of structural failure. But before he left, he took one last look at the man who had been both his greatest enemy and his only father. Anakin Skywalker, no longer Darth Vader, lay at peace. The shadow of the Sith finally lifted from him. Luke turned away, carrying not just his father's body later, but his father's legacy, complicated, flawed, but redeemed in the end. Outside, in the vast blackness, the Force shifted, and somewhere in its infinite currents, Anakin's presence faded into light. Chapter 15. The hollow throne the Emperor was dead, and in the corridors of power, nothing was more dangerous than a throne without an occupant. The news spread through the Death Star like a contagion, whispered at first by officers who had seen the lightning, the screams, the sudden absence of Sidious's oppressive presence. Within minutes, the whispers became shouts, arguments, and finally, gunfire. The chain of command collapsed faster than anyone had anticipated. On the bridge, Admiral Pyatt's last orders dissolved into chaos, as a turbolaser barrage from the rebel fleet lit the sky. The once unshakable Imperial discipline crumbled, replaced by panic. Officers who had sworn blind loyalty now calculated survival first. Some barked contradictory orders to retreat, others to press the attack. A few tried to reach escape pods, only to find them already launching, often under the boots of those with higher rank or sharper elbows. Above Ender, Star Destroyers began to drift out of formation, captains no longer bound by a single, terrible will. The Empire had always been a hierarchy of fear, and with its apex gone, fear had no focus, far from the battle. In the shadowed chambers of the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, the Dark Council of Advisors gathered in secrecy. Maz Ameda, once The Grand Vizier presided with trembling authority. He had felt the moment Sidious died, a sudden emptiness in the force that left the air in the great hall cold and thin. "The Emperor will be avenged," Ameda said, his voice lacking the certainty it once carried. The others, men and women who had wielded power only at Sidious' pleasure, exchanged uneasy glances. They knew the truth. Without the Emperor, their own positions were nothing but targets. Already, ambitious moths were making their moves. In the outer rim, Warlord Ginge broke from the chain of command, declaring his fleet sovereign until a legitimate successor emerged. In the core, Grand Marth Ardus Kane began fortifying the Oversector to act as his personal kingdom. Rumors even spoke of admirals forming alliances with criminal syndicates to keep their hold on sectors and in the unknown regions, the dark frontier that even the Empire rarely charted. Shadows stirred. There were always stories of hidden Sith enclaves, forgotten academies, and loyalists too fanatical to bow to any but the dark side. Now, with the Emperor gone, they whispered of a legacy that could not be extinguished in one such place. Deep within a hollowed asteroid temple, a robed figure knelt before a holocron, one of Sidious' own. The device flickered to life, casting the chamber in crimson light. The Emperor's recorded voice, ageless, venomous, spoke of contingency plans, secret fleets, and the survival of Sith doctrine beyond death. "Power does not die," the recording hissed. "It changes hands." Back in orbit over Ender, the rebel fleet pressed its advantage. The second Death Star began to tremble as fires tore through its core. Luke Skywalker guided a battered Lambda-class shuttle out of the hangar, his father's shrouded body aboard. For the rebels, victory was within reach. For the Empire, the hollow throne was already filling with vultures. The galaxy did not know it yet, but the Emperor's fall was not an ending. It was an unsealing, the release of ambitions long chained by fear of his wrath. Without Sidious' hand to direct it, the darkness would spread, fragmenting, mutating, and in some places growing stronger. From the opulent spires of Coruscant to the dust-choked outposts on the fringe, every ambitious warlord, every force cult, every shadow agent felt it. Opportunity. And somewhere beyond the edges of known space, a presence smiled, faint, cold, and patient. The throne was empty. But the game was far from over. Chapter 16. Echoes of the Chosen One. The war ended in fire. The second Death Star bloomed into a sun over Ender, scattering fragments of durasteel and molten glass into the void. On the forest moon below, celebration erupted, drums, laughter, and the strange music of Ewok flutes. For the first time in generations, the galaxy dared to hope, but hope is never unanimous. The news traveled unevenly across the stars. In some worlds, the fall of the Emperor was greeted with parades and bonfires. On Chandrila, Mon Mothma addressed a jubilant crowd, her voice carrying the promise of a new republic rising from the ashes. On Corellia, pilots lit up the sky with synchronized thruster bursts, a tribute to the rebellion's victory. Elsewhere, the news was met with silence and fear. On Imperial strongholds, like Bastion, officers spoke in hushed tones, unwilling to believe that the man who had ruled for decades could simply be gone. In cantinas across the mid-rim, patrons leaned in close to whisper rumors that the Emperor had been assassinated, that a secret Sith heir waited to claim his place, that the Death Star's destruction was merely a ploy. But one rumor spread further and faster than the rest. They spoke of Darth Vader, the Emperor's fist, the terror of the Outer Rim, turning against his master in the final moments. Some claimed he had done it to seize the throne himself, only to be betrayed. Others whispered that it had been an act of love, the last defiance of a father for his son. The truth was already slipping away, buried beneath the weight of conflicting tales. Among the Jedi, or what remained of them, the story carried a different significance. Luke Skywalker, now the last of their order, spoke little of what had happened in the throne room. But to those who listened closely, his silences spoke volumes. When asked about Vader's end, Luke would only say, "He was my father." And in the end, he was Anakin Skywalker again. That single name sparked its own wave of speculation. The holocrons of the old Republic, long hidden or destroyed, still held records of the young Jedi Knight who had been called the Chosen One. Destined, the prophecy said, to bring balance to the Force. Some historians claimed the prophecy had now been fulfilled. The Sith were gone, destroyed by the very man who had once been one of them. Others argued that it was too convenient to clean, balance. Wrote one Coruscanti philosopher in the early days of the New Republic, is not the absence of darkness, but the coexistence of both light and shadow. To call the prophecy fulfilled is to ignore the truth. Darkness does not die, it waits. In the temples of Jeddah, rebuilt stone by stone after Imperial desecration, the guardians of the wills debated the meaning of Anakin's end. Was the Chosen One a savior, or merely another in a long line of destroyers whose actions cleared the stage for the next war? Leia Organa, still unaware of her full connection to the man, avoided the topic entirely. Publicly, she honored Luke's account of Vader's redemption. Privately, she struggled with the thought of what it meant to be the daughter of both a hero and a tyrant, on the farthest edges of known space. Force cults and Sith sympathizers twisted the tale for their own ends. In their telling, Vader had been the true emperor, betrayed by a weak apprentice and a treacherous son. They called him martyr, not monster. The truth, the real truth, lay in the throne room of the second Death Star, and in the heart of a man who had once been both Anakin and Vader. But that truth had died with him. What remained were echoes in Luke's quiet moments, when he could still hear his father's voice. Echoes in the Force, faint ripples, that spoke of a balance shifted, but not settled. Echoes in the galaxy's collective memory, already reshaping into legend and legends. As the galaxy had learned long ago, were dangerous things. They inspired hope, yes, but they also inspired ambition. Chapter 17. The black seeds in the Force. The galaxy believed Darth Vader was gone. But death is not an ERAS, URE. In the days after Ender, while the New Republic scrambled to establish its rule, subtle disturbances rippled through the Force, currents that Jedi and Sith alike would have recognized, had there been many left to feel them. To the untrained, they were nothing. To the attuned, they were whispers in the dark. Luke Skywalker felt them first. They came in dreams. At night, he found himself back on the Death Star, not in battle, but in silence. The throne room lay untouched, save for the mask of Darth Vader resting on the steps. Sometimes he reached for it. Sometimes it lifted on its own, revealing no face beneath, only shadow. When he told no one, it was not because he didn't trust them, but because he feared what the visions might mean. Elsewhere in the underworld of Nar Shaddaa, a black market dealer unveiled a relic he claimed had been smuggled from Ender's orbit, a charred piece of armor, unmistakably from Vader's suit. Pilgrims of the dark side came to see it, their fingers brushing the scorched metal as if expecting it to breathe. They swore. The relic hummed faintly when held in silence. On Dathomir, the Night Sisters danced in the red mist of their homeworld, chanting to call spirits from the depths of the Force. That night, one of their number collapsed mid-ritual, screaming of a tall figure in black, standing at the edge of her vision, silent, watching, his presence heavier than gravity itself. In the archives of Coruscant, now under New Republic control, a junior historian sorting through confiscated Imperial data cores stumbled on encrypted files marked only with the sigil of the Sith. Inside were records of Vader's private missions, hunts for ancient artifacts, tombs, and holocrons. The coordinates were scattered across the galaxy, some in regions charted only in rumor. The historian forwarded the data to a superior. It was intercepted before it could reach its destination. The thief was never identified. Somewhere in the unknown regions, on a world without a name in Republic records, a lone acolyte of the dark side lit a single torch within a cavern. Before him stood a sarcophagus of black stone, its surface carved with symbols older than Coruscant itself. In his hands, he held a stolen fragment of Vader's armor. He pressed it to the carvings, and the stone shuddered, faint, but enough to send dust raining from the ceiling. And in the depths of the Force, like seeds lying dormant beneath winter frost, the remnants of Vader's presence remained. Luke, meditating one night beneath the stars of Yavin 4, thought he felt his father's voice, not words, not even intent, just a pressure, a sensation like a hand on his shoulder. It was gone before he could reach for it, but it left behind a question that gnawed at him. Was this a farewell, or a warning? The New Republic celebrated its freedom. Statues of the Emperor were toppled, banners burned. But beyond the speeches and ceremonies, quiet rumors grew. Dark side cults were on the move. Smugglers were trading in strange artifacts. And in the empty spaces of the galaxy, the ruins, the forgotten temples, the desolate moons, the dark side stirred. For the galaxy, the death of Darth Vader was the end of an era. For the Force, it was the planting of something new, something patient, something dangerous. The black seeds had been sown. Chapter 18. The prophecy without end. The holocron flickered in the dark. Its voice was old, older than any Jedi temple, older than any Sith empire. It spoke in a language that was less words than currents in the Force felt, not heard. And though the recording had been made by mortal hands, the knowledge it carried was not bound to time. The Chosen One will bring balance to the Force. So said the prophecy. But prophecy, like the Force itself, was fluid. It could be bent, reinterpreted, turned inside out until its meaning was unrecognizable. Anakin Skywalker had been the boy from Tatooine, freed from slavery and anointed by the Jedi as the one who would fulfill it. He had been the knight who fell, the Sith who ruled, the father who destroyed his own master to save his son. To some, that was the end of the prophecy. The Sith were broken, the Emperor gone, the balance restored. But the Force is not a ledger to be balanced once and left alone in the decades that followed. Storytellers reshaped the tale. In the marketplaces of Naboo, they told of a hero who had faced the Emperor and thrown him into the abyss, bringing peace forever. On Corellia, they told it differently, of a warlord who killed his own master to seize power, only to die before claiming it. In the Outer Rim, where the reach of the New Republic was still fragile, whispers claimed that Vader had not died at all, that he had vanished into the unknown regions to gather strength. Truth and myth intertwined until they were indistinguishable. Luke Skywalker knew the truth, at least, his truth. He had seen the man beneath the mask, heard his last words, felt the shift in the Force when Anakin Skywalker died. But even he could not be certain whether the prophecy was complete, or if he had merely witnessed the turning of a single page in a much larger story. The Force offered no answers. It never did. On Coruscant, the New Republic began to rebuild the Jedi archives. Among the fragments recovered from the temple ruins were other prophecies, half-burned or incomplete. Some spoke of a shadowed heir who would rise after the Chosen One's passing. Others hinted that the Chosen One was not a singular figure, but a cycle, a role that would return whenever the balance tilted too far in one direction. In the unknown regions, far from the reach of Republic fleets, dark hands gathered what remained of the Emperor's teachings. Holocrons, Sith blades, ancient tomes, all were hoarded, studied, and hidden. The voice of Darth Sidious echoed still, not in the living, but in the memory of machines and the hunger of those who sought to replace him. The Force itself was not still. It shifted, ebbed, and flowed like the tide. In moments of quiet meditation, Luke thought he could sense the faintest threads, traces of his father's presence, woven into that endless current. Sometimes it was warmth, sometimes it was warning, always it was fleeting. And so the song continued, a song older than the Jedi, older than the Sith, a song of light and dark, of rise and fall, of victory and betrayal. The Chosen One had played his verse, and the galaxy would remember it. But the melody did not end here. The holocron's final words faded into silence. In the darkness, the faint hum of the Force remained, eternal. Somewhere, beyond known space, a new shadow stirred. Somewhere else, a new light kindled. The prophecy had not ended. It had only paused for breath.